with Marty Duffy, Liz Rhoades, and Lew Bryson, and a special guest this week, as usual. This time we are joined by Monique Huston from Winebow, Fine Wine and Spirits. So I'm going to let the gang introduce y'all to Monique in just a moment. First, real quick, I'm Will Hookinga from Zavvy.co, and if you're joining us for the first time today, just to kind of give you a quick tour of how everything works. So to the right of the screen, you should see a chat window. Go ahead, say hello, let us know where you're tuning in from. If you have a question at any point during the presentation, there's a little button at the bottom that says ask a question that you, surprise, use to ask questions. So type your question in there. That's the best way to make sure we see it. And last but not least, please share the event. There's a button at the top right to do that. You can invite friends to join us. But with all of that said, Marty, Liz, Lew, take it away.
Yee-hoo. Hi, everyone. I'm Martin Duffy. I am a former master of whiskey from DIAGEO, about 14 years, nothing big. And then 2 glorious years as National Brand Ambassador for Benedictine. I am currently that's right.
Benedictine's back, baby.
I am currently for the last 6 years, coming up on my 6th anniversary of being the National Brand Ambassador, or brand representative. I'm too old for brand ambassador. For Glencairn Crystal, these cats, and I just reminded myself the other day I'm a registered minister. So if any of you kids want to get married,
hallelujah,
or funerals, I'll do funerals. Anything except no circumcisions. I faint. All right, Lizard.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Liz Rhoades, technical distiller, spirit consultant, and real life whiskey geek. Yes, that's a thing. I have just over a decade of experience in the alcoholic beverage, which the majority of that I've spent at DIAGEO as well. I'm currently founder and principal at Spirit Safe Consulting. And if you want to learn a little bit more about that, I actually have my website, a link to my website. If you scroll down to the About the Host section. So Zavvy is awesome. Thanks for putting that there. And speaking of awesome, Lew.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Lew Bryson. I'm a whiskey and beer writer. I was the managing editor of Whisky Advocate Magazine for about 20 years. And right now I'm freelancing, but I'm also the senior drinks writer for the Daily Beast website and the author of, there it is, Whiskey Masterclass. My latest book just came out this year in February. Thank you. Yeah, we'll have to get Monique a copy. I
have one. It's just not in my office. You know, the thing is, these are the shelved books are the ones I'm not reading right this second. The ones out by my reading chair, including Lew's book.
That's just fake. Those are fake books. You can pull the whole thing off. They're like cardboard.
It's all flat.
Made to look smart.
This week I'm drinking Manitoni Spirits, a Pennsylvania whiskey. This is their new small batch. I picked it because it has an interesting mash bill. It's 42% malt, 41% wheat, 13% oats, and 4% rye. I mean, not your ordinary passel of grains.
Yeah, I'm trying this one. Oh, sorry.
It's a bit young, but it's interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm trying this one. It was just given to me the other day. This is the Penelope Bourbon. Most of the whiskey is sourced from MGP, but it's 5 different mash bills and fatted together down at Castle and Key.
Oh, okay.
Straight bourbon, cask strength, or barrel strength. And I'm trying it for the first time right now. So, yeah. Moniquer?
Martiner?
I have to admit, I've known Monique since she was a little girl. Remember going out to Omaha, Nebraska. She was just a kid, braces, ponytails. Imagine a whiskey bar called the Dundee Dell. And just screaming like a little woman in the wilderness saying, hey, Doesn't anyone notice we have a huge whiskey selection? They did. You had what, 800 different single malt scotches?
By the end, we had over 1,400. But I think the first time you came out that we really kind of took note that it was a big deal was when we were around 800, which would have been like early 2000s.
That was
a big deal.
It was a big deal. I mean, it still is a big deal. I don't know exactly. I will be there this weekend. I will tell you guys exactly what is left when I get there on Friday.
Yeah.
I'm going to drive out for a final hurrah. The Dell is closing in 2 weeks.
For good?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Put a little black ribbon there for me.
Yeah. It's very crazy.
Black ribbon.
But it was awesome. It was back in the day. We had a ton of whiskey experts from all over the world come in. Yeah. Marty was one of the very first that paid attention. This is in the days of phone calls before everybody was on the interwebs and there was lots of social media. And
I remember
you had us drinking Johnny Walker, all the components, and we kicked off that evening with a Johnny Walker Black Mojito. And it was really wonderful.
A Jojito. That's what we called it. A
It was really good.
A Jojito.
And Lew has always been really good to me. You guys did a big feature on me in Whisky Advocate.
Oh, yeah.
Very early on. I think I was the first lady that got to.
I believe you were.
Yeah, it was really fantastic. I was really humbled by both of those things. And Liz, I'm just obsessed with because I'm a whiskey geek too, and she's a lady that gets to make it.
Hey, girls.
So,
hey, Monique, tell us. Because I don't know. I'm sure you told me back in the day, but so how did you get involved in Dundee Dell? And from the Dundee Dell, I know that you started coming to Chicago for Whiskey Fest and all the other events. You met Brett, and you started expanding your whole world. And I believe you used to take a lot of the Dundee Dell regulars on trips to Scotland. You'd organize these whole thing. Give us a little chronological journey. Monique's journey through the world of whiskey.
It was in my general overall educational journey when I came back to Omaha because UNO, University of Nebraska at Omaha, it's a great business school. And so when I came back, I had waited tables since I was 14. So that was that was always my go-to. And so I came back, and that's where I had a friend that I think was maybe the janitor at the bar or something like that. And he said they're looking for waitresses. And so he introduced me to Pat, who was the owner at the time. He had been there since 1989. This was in 1999. And ended up coming on board. And within a few months, I really wanted to bartend. I saw that was where the money was. And Pat was pretty old school. He thought men bartend and women wait tables. And I was like, that sounds like a lawsuit. That doesn't sound awesome. Yeah. And so they started letting me, have shifts behind the bar. And it turns out all the guys behind the bar make more money when there's a woman behind the bar. And things were cleaner suddenly as well. So it was pretty great. It worked out well for everybody. But yeah, and then, I had lofty intentions of going back into the business side, at all kinds of different things. But the whiskey collection there just grabbed me. I mean, Pat had me doing our whiskey education starting in 2001. And they had been having whiskey tastings in the back room of the Dell since 1989, 4:00 on Sunday afternoon. So since 1989, there had been a single club there. So they called themselves the Omaha Scotch Watch Society. And those guys really were my mentors. I mean, so there's Bill and BJ. I mean, you guys, those guys, Marty. And so, they had trips that they started going to Scotland in 1998. And so I started traveling with them in 2001. And I mean, the first time I set foot in Scotland, I was in love. I was a goner, man. It's, it was great. So I was there until 2010. And then I was in Spain for a couple of years. Doing various different consulting gigs. And then I just missed, the US and my family and all my siblings. And I didn't even know what distribution was. I always say I was like a mark, if you came to my bar to sell me something, I bought everything. I didn't negotiate pricing.
I can attest to that. Yeah.
I didn't know that you could get like a free bottle to do a tasting for people. I just bought the product and sold it.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sure, Marty, you literally had to high five. I'm sure you were high fiving. You're just, Dan Kroll on your way in. I know Dan's out here too. But it's just, it's like, oh, Monique, I'll buy it. because we had everything. It was great. It was really a fantastic time, but it afforded me the education across everybody's portfolios, every brand, as much as I wanted to read. I always enjoyed, reading everything that Lew was writing, and we had great assets in terms of like magazines, and great books and all kinds of things that are still really valid today. But yeah, I came back, and then I've worked on the import and distribution side since then. So that would be going on about 8 years now.
And now I'm 8 years, really?
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Oh, it seems longer, yeah. Because you were with who was the first one here in Chicago?
They were called Stoller.
Stoller, yeah. Randy Stoller is still in business. He's still out there active in the industry.
They still have an import company. He and his son actually have a distillery in an old jail in Indiana. But kind of sight unseen, they brought me on board and said, this nerd is going to help us sell high-end spirits. And I was like, these guys seem cool. Like, I can go out and tell the stories of these whiskeys. Like, at the time, we had Springbank and Compass Box and like all these great things in our book. And I was overjoyed that it was someone's job to get out there and talk to people about this stuff. I could not believe that was a job.
What did you think I was doing all that time?
Just bullshitting? Oh, can I say that?
Well, yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Especially when it's about me.
Right.
So now you were, and actually I can attest to the fact that when you got to Stoller, man, the portfolio just exploded. You brought in some really great stuff.
No, they had those things. They just didn't know how to sell them.
They sure did.
And literally, I walked through the warehouse and was like, whoa, why is this over here and this over here and this over here? I'm dusting things off. And like, I just had to like, you guys, these things are really special. Like, help me get these out to more people. And it was amazing because I had a couple of great friends here, obviously Brett from Vinny's, but also my friend Mike Ryan was running the whiskey program at Sable at that point, which had a fabulous whiskey bar, and obviously Mike Miller at Delilah's. So I would see these beautiful whiskeys, make 3 phone calls, and all of a sudden 20 cases were gone, and the Stollers thought I was some kind of mad genius.
You're a genius because you came up with the idea of let our customers know what product we have.
Very smart.
Genius.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then I've been with Winebow now just over 5 years, which is like you said, it's a fine wine and spirits company. The bulk of our business is in wine. We've been in wine distribution and import for 40 years and really in the spirits business for quite a long time. We've worked with artisanal. I'm starting to use artisanal instead of craft. That's my new word. I can't define craft anymore. So, yeah. And it worked with some fabulous brands at the very beginning, Balcones and Boyd and Blair vodka and Osacalis brandy and like some old school, really fantastic distilleries. We started distributing like Del Maguey 20 plus years ago. We started working with High West 10 years ago. A lot of brands that then sold off to huge companies. That's kind of a Winebow's MO is like we take a brand, tell the story, and then it gets still sold to someone and taken away from us.
Well, that's the truth. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I don't think of Winebow as being a small organization compared to some others, but yeah, some of the smaller distributors, that happens all the time. The brands outgrow them, and it's like Broadway Danny Rose. Have you ever seen that movie where all of a sudden, if he has a artist, a client of his that becomes a huge hit, they take off for bigger horizons and leave him in there.
Yeah, it's like minor league baseball.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it's, you get a farm team. You these brands have to prove themselves somewhere.
I know,
and if they're really big.
But it is kind of sad because a lot of these
people like Monique do the real work. Yeah. I'm sorry. Do a lot of work. I shouldn't say the real work. It's all real work.
And you're right, Lew, but frankly, it's our team. It's our sales team. It's the people on the ground every day who that condition is their bread and butter. And in a lot of cases, the brands don't move because we're not big enough. We're the 9th largest distribution house in the country. It's not that. It's that they move into a network that they don't have a choice. And so you have to go. But it's like for people, when Del Maguey moved in New York, there were people that was like 30% of their commission. And they had the brand for 20 years. When no one was buying mezcal. Those things, I mean, for me, sometimes it's rare that one of those sales, you're kind of like, things come and go. Okay, I get it. But there's ones that have there's ones that have brought me to tears. I mean, there are ones that I just can't believe it, but it happens. We have to expect that it's going to happen. And we're happy to see them make the money. We're happy to see them if they sell and they can, have more resources and build another distillery. Or in the case of like a mezcal distillery, they're building roads and schools. I do not. Everyone deserves that. Everybody deserves that.
Yeah.
Hey, Monique, just real quick, a few hellos from Donna Sherwood, Todd McCoy, Andrew Faulkner, little Monica Wolf, and that little slacker Dan Crowell. Yeah,
he is not a slacker. I will tell you. I have seen Mr. Crowell on at least 2 whiskey tastings a week this entire time. But what I will tell you, I got this
pre-recorded. They're all pre-recorded.
All pre-recorded. Dan is back off of furlough as of this week. He shared this, which is awesome.
Yeah, and I think his bail is up too.
Great timing.
Oh, you got a question?
Yeah, actually, I just want to. Sorry, that way. I want to follow up a little bit.
Yeah, sure. You go ahead.
I don't think the people who buy whiskey, people like me who buy it and drink it, the customers, I don't think they realize what effect someone like Monique has on not just what's on the shelf, because you're obviously, selling those brands into retailers, into bars, but then what actually gets into their hands, because a good rep, a good ambassador, whatever term you want to use, doesn't just put it on the shelf. They get it in the head of the retailer, of the bartender, of the clerk, of the manager, and that's not. Obviously, it's about money. It's about selling the brand, but it's also about the brands that you're excited about, because they're the ones you're going to push harder, and that's usually, the better brands, the better whiskeys. And I think people, well, I know I did, just thought that salespeople were just salespeople, and that's all there was to it, and it's not. It's a lot more than that.
Yeah, in some organizations, I do think that, at base, your distributor has to be a warehouse and a fulfillment center, but we need to be much more than like a fulfillment center, much more than like an Amazon. If we can't warehouse and deliver your product, we have much, much bigger issues. But really, the sales consultant, really, I don't even call them sales people or whatever. I call them sales consultants. They need to be a business consultant. They need to be the person on the front end of like what's new, what's coming, what they're excited about. And be able to say, oh my gosh, Monique introduced me to this great new whiskey, and we just were online. At these times, we were just online with the distiller, and we did a virtual tour, and I got to taste through these things. And boy, I think this would fit great at your store or in your bar because of these amazing, points. There's something cool in the mash bill. They're using they're aging in a cool cask, or it's the business is, run by women or people of color, or like whatever the things are that we need to highlight. We really challenge ourselves to, first and foremost, the whiskey or whatever the spirit is. The spirit has to taste good. The spirit tastes good, and then you've got great packaging to support it. You've got solid pricing or fair pricing, for what we're dealing with. All of those things are great. And then if you've got an authentic story to back that up, not necessarily some made up, kind of bullshit thing that kind of like fits the mold.
The made up kind of bullshit. That's my favorite kind.
Yes, as far as the real bullshit.
Well, I have a dear friend who always says, never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's to me, it is really a pleasure to be the person that gets to take that story from the distiller and get it all the way to the consumer or to the bartender. There's at no point in time am I going to want to not be behind a table at a show talking to someone about the whiskey, or sitting next to someone at a bar or across a bar. Like, that's been those are like my happiest moments. And even all the way throughout COVID, like I said, I've been on a minimum of 2 whiskey tastings a week. Some weeks it's 5 or 6 or 7, because people are just longing, to have some kind of, connection with people. And there's very, very few things that we connect over in the way that we do whiskey or wine or food. There's really, we don't connect the same way over like a clothing brand or a, detergent.
Well, I would go even further and say, even among spirits. You have little pockets of your rum guys. You have pockets of,
I would agree,
cognac folk, but whiskey, I mean, come on. And then even among whiskey, the world of whiskey, you got your Scotch fanatics, you got your bourbon. Oh, the bourbon guys drive me nuts to some degree because they just, when you know exactly the hour that bottle was made and you're complaining because it doesn't taste just like the bottle that was made 2 hours earlier.
A121 is just not as good as A120.
I just want to strangle them. So,
okay.
Get
the anorak.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always think it's funny too that people assume because you're in the industry that somehow it's possible to remember things at that minute a detail level. Like, have you tasted last year's release of this next to this year's release? And you're like, I have. And maybe I like one more than the other, but like, can I recall all of my tasting notes? I mean, does it matter? Do you like it?
That one single malt
Right,
you pissed me out on last year. Was that a 2-row or 4-row barley? Could you tell me that? Now you can't. You fucker.
Liz, you guys actually have these conversations, don't you?
That's
don't
right.
you?
Yeah. Usually, I mean, so that's often times that if the question was asked, so it would get back to me or someone like me, and so I've seen these questions come through, so it's interesting to hear your perspective about it too.
Well, it's like, Liz, what you do, I mean, the technical side of it is we're making sure that things can be made consistently, efficiently, on budget. But at the end of the day, does it taste good? Can we sell? And it's not about the first bottle sale. It's about the second bottle. That's the most important thing.
The second, yeah.
Yeah, because the first bottle is all about the graphics.
See, okay, so Lew, you read my mind because I had a question about that specifically. No, it's good. Specifically with innovation and with your experience. So you mentioned, ticking the boxes, liquid, packaging, story, but specifically with innovation, have you seen maybe one influenced one or the other in terms of what actually sold? Was it more packaging centric from like a premium standpoint, or more about the story? I don't know if you have seen if one or the other, specifically with innovation, has done more than the other.
I mean, I think that things like, packaging is incredibly important. If you can't get someone to stop at a shelf and look at your bottle, you go to a huge whiskey set and it's like, what's going to draw your eye? So, that's important. And then, things like paper quality or the shape of the bottle that are going to cause you to pick it up and turn it around and actually take the next step to learn something more about it. All of that's really important, but that's not necessarily going to get you, to buy it. But if you're just sitting across a bar, you have to be able to, there at least you can taste it. But if you're standing in the store aisle, what's going to be the thing that's really going to grab you? And it might just be price point. It might be something, at one point in time, I think people would buy anything that was like whiskey and it was $29.99 or less. And now we're probably in a $39.99 kind of spot where you'll experiment with it. And like, even if you're disappointed or maybe it's just not your cup of tea, maybe you'll put it in a cup of tea or with some Coke and you'll still get through it. But it really has to have all those pieces, I think, to truly engage someone and get that second bottle. Because if you take it home and the price was right, you drink it and the taste is right, and then you learn something about it, then you go, gosh, this is really great. Like, I'm going to Google it, or I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. Then there's something intriguing, because most of us don't live in a vacuum. We probably aren't just sitting at home drinking by ourselves. Maybe we're drinking with a friend or a partner. Maybe we're getting online and doing something. People like to have then that bit of knowledge, and then you're the person that's giving that knowledge and that story to the next person. So it's like, at the end of the day, it really does have to have all three in order to be sustainable, or at least be flexible. Like, sometimes these really small companies, maybe they don't have all that. Maybe you don't have great packaging when you first get started, but the juice is really good and it's at a great price. So then you're going to evolve into a bespoke bottle, better paper quality, whatever it is. But it's like, if you've got two of the parts, you're going to get into the third one if you're going to be sustainable.
But now, Monique, when you're working with these brands, especially these new brands, and they have all that. I've seen some of these small brands spent so much money on the bottle and the label, There was one weird. There was that one weird vodka that stripper put out in Vegas that I saw that WSWA, that it was a naked woman whose nipples lit up.
Oh my God!
Are you saying this is quality packaging?
I think she might have taken
Very
it
innovative.
a very well. Yeah, she was a stripper. So,
innovative.
but
so there's a story there, is what you're saying. They have the story at least.
Well, they have a bottle that they've spent a lot of money on the label and the size, but then when it comes down to you guys selling it, they think you're going to do all the footwork, and you will for some. But if you have 100 brands, if you have 600 brands, you definitely don't have time to go around hand selling each and every one. So, how do you, as a distributor, relay that? I mean, just come straight out and say, "Hey, look, you got to have some feet on the ground in these markets. You've got to push it."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a conversation with a distiller up in the Northeast, and they were working with us outside of their home state. They were working with us in New York, and he was so excited. They got a cocktail at the Pegu Club, and that's big. That's a big deal. She's got a fabulous palate. You made it into a cocktail there. That's great. Okay, so in addition to that, so how many cases did you sell last year? 48. You sold 48 cases into the state of New York. We have an issue. And he was calling me because he thought that he was ready for Miami, Chicago, and LA, all three. And I said, do you have, he was the distiller. He's also the person bottling, labeling, packing, shipping, responding to my distributor questions. And I said, okay, so you're going to go on the road and you're going to be the person that's going to go introduce this in LA and Miami. So what happens when your home state needs an order? Who's going to bottle it? Who's going to label it? Who's going to pack it? Who's going to ship it? Just really, really basic questions. And he was just like, I hadn't really thought about that, And so you got to be doing the best that you can be doing in your home market. But typically, if we start with people where we feel like we have all three of those components, I actually don't think it's prudent to have boots on the ground from day one. I think there needs to be a little bit of proof of concept, so you've got some low hanging fruit, you get a couple good retail placements, see how it starts to pull through, maybe pay to support some tastings when tastings were still a thing. Make sure that your point of sale is in line. Make sure that you've got a couple people in the on-premise that you're willing to work with. Maybe you're even going to take a little price discount to have your spirit in a cocktail at a great bar that's going to start to get you some, Instagram posts, or something like that. But we always talk about when we reach a certain point, you're going to have to then be able to budget to put someone on the ground. Like, we can get you to this level. Let's all agree that we're going to, and maybe it's a time, maybe it's a certain number of cases or something like that. But then we're going to expect you to put the resources out there to put someone on, someone part-time or whatever it is, somebody that's going to come in every 3 months. And so we just set that up from the beginning. And if that's not going to be something that they can ever afford or that they see a value in, we're not aligned from the very beginning. And so it probably isn't going to be a great partnership if that footing isn't solid, from day one. So.
Yeah. So, I always thought it'd be good for any small brand to at least have a brand manager, or someone who can at least look over, and if you ever need someone to come into a market, but to pay a full-time, like a brand ambassador or a market manager just for one market. But I know of a distillery in a neighboring state where I asked the guy, "How come you're not in Chicago? How come your brand's not?" They want me to come down there and help sell it. And I go, "Well, yeah. I mean, can't you at least get somebody else works with you to go on, send them down?" He goes, "There is no one else. It's just me. I produce it. I bottle it. Dude, what the fudge? How do you even get it outside the door? I mean, I don't get it."
Well, and too, Marty, sometimes the opposite is true. Sometimes people are like, "I'll be there every weekend. I'll be with your people." And you're like, no. We have hundreds of people that we have to support. We can't have you here all the time either. So there's a fine balance in there.
No.
But it was really, I saw that Riley's over there on the chat too. And it's like, back in the day, that was one of the first really fun brands that I got to work with was Few Spirits here in Chicago. And it was amazing to have assets like Paul. And I know Paul was just on with you guys too, but to have somebody right there in your home market that is willing to go out and do the things, but also is just like a good person out having food, having drinks, tipping well, saying, "Hey, that in and of itself is like, that is great work. Like that's super, super helpful. It doesn't have to be formal."
Hey, by the way, Dan Crowell did say that, he still has to do some community service. So I wasn't completely off. Yeah. It's part of his sentence.
I think he's doing contract tracing.
but they want him to do it in person, which is really weird. I just think that's a little dangerous. But that's Dan. He's a go-getter.
Yep.
You do have a question from Rick Ewing. What is your favorite unexpected discovery that you have added to one of your portfolios?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's really interesting during these crazy COVID times, the stuff that's been trending, and I know you guys, but maybe not the general consumer, we're all reading the Nielsen data and the trends, is like high-end American whiskey continues to trend, agave continues to trend. But the fact that everybody can make cocktails at home and they are doing it, they're like learning virtually how to shake up all these things, is that cordials are trending. So there've been all these like liqueurs. I'm sure Benedictine is really trending, Marty.
It's
but
that time, right?
it's really kind of crazy. And so with that, we've actually had more requests from people to kind of bring more of those things in. We've been adding a lot of volume in terms of liqueurs. So things that I wouldn't normally, I love to consume great cocktails, but I'm not good at making cocktails. There's like bartenders out there that are so much more talented than me. Yeah, I'm never going to learn that craft, Lew. It's like, it's for smarter, more creative people than me.
I think my shaker has a hole in it or something.
I'm a Manhattan and a martini guy. That's all I do, and I do it the simplest way possible.
I just I love all those things. But to Rick's question, one of the really fun ones that we get to work with is we have a distiller partner in Minnesota called Domfork, the Domfork distillery, run by a German family. So it's like father, mother, daughter, son, and they make these rye-based liqueurs, and so they're like these old school German, like proper, and I had never heard of a lot of these categories. So they make one called a Pfeffersack liqueur and one called Rabbit in the Rye. And they're really fun because it really appeals to me as a whiskey drinker. It's got these great quality whiskey bases where you really get the rye. They're really, really spicy, but then they're layered with like different spices and things in them that make them a liqueur. And people are going crazy for them. And their bottles and packaging are beautiful. And, they're kind of at the higher end in terms of price point, but they're really versatile because they're kind of whiskey and liqueur. So those have been a beautiful surprise to me and probably not something that I would have consumed. But we brought them on because they were really good brandy gin distillers. And then it was like, we just kind of fell in love with everything that they were doing. And then it turns out all this stuff is trending up right now. So it works out well for everybody.
Hey, so how are brands surviving, in your brand specifically, in this current climate? If they're not the big 1.75s that seem to be flying out of the Binny's front door, how are they surviving, and what would you recommend to some of your brands to do?
It's and most of our brands, most of our folks don't have 175s. I mean, that's not classic for all the distiller to have anyway, but also so a lot of the 175s are really, they're comfort brands. And so you're seeing people, whatever they would buy normally, they're like, well, I'm going to be at home drinking for the next week, so I'm just going to buy a bigger bottle of it. A lot of our people, I mean, that's one of the real blessings of being kind of a smaller distiller is your ability to pivot and be really a little bit more nimble in terms of business. So most people, as quickly as they could, started moving to hand sanitizer. And, it's a little frustrating that I think probably even a lot of the huge distillers did some hand sanitizer, but I think a lot of them did it for about 2 seconds so that they could put out in the press that like, look at us, we're doing hand sanitizer too. But they're really going to be making vodka and whiskey and everything day to day that people are consuming, where a lot of our smaller distillers are still producing hand sanitizer at a very, very high rate, donating as much of it as they can to first responders and hospitals and homeless shelters and like doing the right thing for their communities. For example, J. Rieger, which is one of our national partners, J. Rieger Distillery out of Kansas City, those guys have made, I want to say it's like, I don't even know, tens of thousands of gallons of hand sanitizer. Enough that they just celebrated the 1-year anniversary of their new distillery. Well, with their new distillery came 3 bars, a full restaurant, a catering. So they had hired all these people. They've kept every single person employed. Wow. Every single person is making a much higher hourly, but they're making hand sanitizer and they're labeling it and they're packing it and they're shipping it, but everybody's got a job. And, that's not necessarily a brand that people are calling for during COVID. It's not a comfort brand. We hope to build it to that point, but they've done just a fabulous job of, keeping all their people on board here locally. Chicago Distilling, those guys have been making hand sanitizer. They're supplying all of our Binny's stores with hand sanitizer. So, they're doing that not necessarily to make money, but to stay afloat. And then I feel like they're all kind of balancing right now. How much can we now go back to making whiskey or RTDs or whatever it is? So, that's been quite a bit of it, Marty, because everything else that they would normally do, the activities, going out and supporting the market, supporting your stores, having meetings with me, whatever it is, we can't do any of that anymore. And a lot of virtual, tons and tons of virtual tastings, tours, and events. We're doing that all the time.
And it is tough. I wouldn't want to be a little brand. Go ahead, Liz.
Oh, no, a follow-up question to that, because I even think about consumer behaviors. So you mentioned just kind of grabbing the comfort brands, but even the time spent in a liquor store, like normally I might peruse down the whiskey aisle and maybe I'm spending, 30 minutes, like just kind of checking out the scene. But of course, that's not something people really are doing. People don't want to be spending time with, in public with people. So what sort of education platforms have you seen that's worked to kind of get, information to the consumer about, maybe their brand that they would know ahead of time before going to the store, where, consumer might just see it by perusing? I don't know if you want to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a great question, Liz, and it's really tough. And I just thought of this, and maybe this won't make sense, but it's kind of like, instead of an if then, it's like a then if. We have to be able to present the information to people, and so whoever accesses that information, it's like goes back to the if. Oh, then I'm going to go buy it. Like, I saw this stuff, I didn't have it in my hand when I did the virtual tour or I attended the tasting, but you made it sound like it tasted so good, or that cocktail looks so refreshing, that now I'm going to go buy this thing. And like, hopefully they're creating with us. We've also been tasking a lot of our partners to just do more creative things with point of sale that can grab somebody very quickly. So if you can, everybody knows QR codes all of a sudden. It's like all the menus and everything else.
Yes.
So if you've got a QR code on your shelf talker that's a 30-second distillery tour, and there's nothing else that's kind of got that little bit of attention. So we've been asking people to do a little bit more, things like that. Our opportunities are frankly just fewer. The other thing is, on-premise or off-premise, you're going to sell through every bit of what you possibly can right now before you reorder. So in the on-premise, if your cocktail used to call for a specific brand of dry gin, at this point, you're going to pour every drop of dry gin into that cocktail until you have to order something, because there's so much uncertainty and there's so much anxiety over it. So even if, and very few people are going to come into like a bar or restaurant and call for a brand, but there just isn't really that time or that space or that feeling of safety in terms of just perusing and shopping. I really miss.
I know that hand sell. If you went into the Binny's in Lincoln Park here, you have David Soda would be walking the whiskey aisle, and he would, I used to love going into Lakeview Binny's, and the late Cal Garcia. Cal, and every time I go in, Cal would say, "Oh, Marty, have you tried this? Or this is kind of cool. This is new. This ain't so great, but this is better." And it was great. It was so, that kind of hand sell is so helpful to small brands, because really now you have an advocate right in the whiskey aisle.
Yep, absolutely.
That's big.
Yeah.
And I don't see a time through the end of the year that people are going to be safe doing, events or anything like that in person. But also, there are still going to be restrictions on how many people can be in a space. Yeah. So if your store is restricted to 50 people and 20 of them are employees, you can't have a bunch of people standing in the aisle tasting you out on things either. So, I've also seen a lot of people getting very creative with like tasting kits, and some legal, some illegal. But there's ways that people can break bottles up, and they're getting them all over the place and getting samples out there. And, people are getting really, really creative. People also, they do have more time to like sit at home and research and look things up and go on virtual tastings. So, people who have gotten on board with giving us more resources, giving us really great, concise education about things, or coming on to events, we've seen really good response from it. So
Maybe that bottle, that stripper's bottle with the light up nipples, actually, she might begin some good traction with that. I mean, it's an eye grabber. Sorry.
Was it coming at 175?
The double D, you mean?
Oh, man.
It had the broth dropping backwards.
I walked right into that once.
That's kind of interesting. Liz, that's good.
No, it's not. No.
Yeah, you know that the other thing that's like completely different from in the off-premise, but it's kind of crazy, is there's not, okay, so when we used to like start out and we're building brands, we would talk about, is this, okay, what's the shelf placement look like? But in the bar, it was, is this a back bar placement that we can build into a cocktail placement? There's no back bar placements. You can't sit at the bar. So what's the point? And then you've got everybody trying to sell all the stock that they have into getting it volume in cocktails right now and cocktails to go and things like that. So on-premise is really just going to be a difficult space for the next 6 months for sure.
Well,
how's cocktails to go doing?
I like them a lot because I can't make good cocktails.
Yeah, but,
so
I mean,
one of my favorite
are
bars.
they actually? I mean, what kind of volume is it? It can't be.
I don't think it's a ton. We have great friends. Actually, the former bar manager at Longman and Eagle here in Chicago, Chad, owns this great bar out in the suburbs in Glen Ellen now called Common Good. And Glen Ellen, the state hadn't okayed cocktails to go. The city hadn't okayed cocktails to go. The village of Glen Ellen wrote him a special dispensation. He and like 3 other businesses in downtown Glen Ellen. It was like official. It was real. And they were the first people in the state. And that was like in April. So they started selling cocktails to go, and they were able to keep all their people employed. I think they only did it 3 days a week. And they did really, really well because there were no other options like that. For some people now, I wouldn't say it's too late, but it might be a little late. But also, it's just going to be incremental. It's just going to be tiny. Like we went to a great local bar, Asterio, that's I think has the best cocktails in the city. They're doing cocktails to go. We took 8 cocktails to go with us the other day. To go share with friends, and it was a blast. It was totally worth it. There, I'm not going to drink it out of the little plastic milk jug. I took it and put it in a nice glass, and did the presentation and everything. But it was nice to have that at home. And I think like drinking, driving is way down. And
way down, yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah, I think Lew, also to that point, it's also going to be up to the individual accounts how well those cocktails sell. I mean, that's the other thing. Some, bars can be just as bad as some small brands where they think, oh, I will make it and they will come. Whereas, again, the whole idea of marketing, you have to market, even to your regulars. If your regulars don't know you're doing it. And most bars don't have mailing lists. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see how it works. I think it would be great. I hope that law stays. I hope all of that, continues, because why not? It's not hurting anyone.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't caused anarchy. Right?
No. Monique, in Ireland, when they've had the drunk driving ban and the smoking ban, and I hated when they banned drunk driving. I thought, really? Takes all the fun out of going to Ireland, driving on the other side of the road. But when they had that, so many pubs suffered from it. A lot of folks decided to stay home and just go. The sales on the off-premise rose. They soared, and people would take it home. But they would go to the store and buy the brands they knew. So now we're into the 5th month? Is this the 5th month of this coronavirus? That, do you think everything has just been frozen in time? Has any brands, have you seen any of you, especially your brands, but even brands outside your portfolio that have grown, were able to do anything special to kind of, stir up some interest, if not generate bigger sales?
Yeah, I mean, probably the most surprising thing to me, I mean, it's less, I mean, now I've seen it month after month, but is the growth at the really high end. But I mean, so we're seeing, American whiskeys over 70, 80, 100, $150 continue to sell in double digits. I mean, double digit growth quarter on quarter.
Wow.
High end agave, high end mezcal, sotol, raicilla. I mean, so it turns out that people who have a lot of money. In some cases now have even more money because they're not commuting. They're saving on all kinds of things. They're eating at home, they're doing all stuff. So when they're spending at retail, everything they're buying is like a bit of a treat. Like, I'm going to go home and drink this. I'm going to enjoy it. And if I didn't go out and have 5 cocktails, that's $100. Okay, I'm going to buy $100 bottle, not a $20 bottle. So we are really seeing significant and sustained growth at the high end, which, I mean, frankly, Winebow plays in that space. We have a lot of very fine spirits, a lot of really wonderful, purveyors, a lot of, let's say, agave distillers, where they are very transparent. They pay, the people taking the agave out of the ground fairly. They pay the distillers fairly. Everything is very, all their practices are on the up and up. A lot of those agave products are $100 a bottle. And I mean, they're selling better now than they have been in any time in recent history. So it's not from anything that they're doing differently. I just think some consumers are in a very different position to spend money a bit differently at this point.
Yeah, the spending has really shifted a lot.
Well, don't you also think, I think we might have brought this up yesterday. I think it was when we were chatting yesterday, that since folks are home more, they're also not driving as much. So they can stay home, drink more, which could lead to a bad thing. You know what I mean? Work would always be that little kind of your internal moderator that, okay, I've had enough. I have to work tomorrow. Well, if I'm not going to work tomorrow, fuck it. I'm every day.
I think too, this is going to be a reckoning. I don't think this is a pause button. I think this is a reckoning, especially in the on-premise industry, that a lot of things were not sustainable. A lot of people were not being paid in a sustainable way. A lot of people without healthcare, and a lot of what we're now calling essential workers. We all know that these people are essential. I hope that we all continue to treat them as though they are essential when we get through this. The people, bringing us our groceries and serving us food and drinks and all these things don't have insurance. And I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, it's unbelievable that people are expected to live on the hourly wages that they do. But when we reckon everything and we make it fair and everybody's got healthcare and we're also paying like farmers and purveyors and everything else, prices are going to be higher. It just is going to be the way that it is. And so in addition to a lot of restaurants and bars closing, the ones that do survive, things are going to be more expensive, which is going to mean that we can afford to go out less. And on and on. I mean, a lot of those things. But I think the quality will be better. The experience will be better. The service and the exchange will be better, is my hope.
I hope so too. I hope that I hope it doesn't, the quality doesn't decrease over time.
Yeah.
I'd kind of like to see a fair trade coffee equivalent in booze. That'd be nice. Somebody that actually, or some group that actually went out there and told you that, yeah, they're getting paid for this.
Yeah. I mean, there's individual brands that do, but a lot of times their voice just isn't loud enough. The platform isn't necessarily, but if there's a time, now's the time, and it's kind of, and the playing field's a little bit more level because the tools that we're using, the Instagrams and the Facebooks and the Twitters and all that stuff, are essentially free if you're not boosting posts. So it's like, if you can get out there and stay on top of people and you've got good followers, now is the time to get that information out.
Well, now, what are you guys doing? Is Winebow doing anything to help the brands as far as getting the word out? I mean, when you're doing all your seminars, is it focusing only on your own portfolio?
Some of it, yeah. We've done it. So we started really early on, especially in some of you guys. I know Marty, Laura Green on my team here. Laura helped us establish a platform really early that we called Raising a Glass, and it was education facing our team, but also the general consumer. So the early ones that we did were mostly agave focused. And so we had Duffy from Siembra Imports, who's one of the people that started the Bat Friendly project. So there's a Bat Friendly certified logo on bottles of agave spirits that allow some of their agave plants, 10% of their agave plants, to go to flower so that they can be pollinated by bats and they can reproduce naturally. That's expensive to let 10% of your plants go to flower. Like, it's crazy. So there's not very many brands that participate, not very many people that know about it, but we did like a 2-hour education one day. We had like 200 people, we had 186 people watching that day. So early on, we did a lot of that was like a little bit more consumer facing. And because I think we were so early to it, we had a lot of attendees and the content was really, really good. And then that was March, April. And then it was like May, June. Now everybody, including us, we're all here. I've been with you guys almost every week. there's so much more of it that the attention is a lot more divided. So we've still got the platform. We continue to do that, as do our, our winemakers and everything else. But everybody's on board now. So I feel like we're not getting quite as much attention. But yeah, we're certainly trying to provide the platform and doing a lot in terms of social media. I always make myself available. I'm happy to talk for hours and hours about all these things. So,
Lew Bank?
Oh yeah.
So Lew and Liz, I don't know if you know Lew Bank, but Lew is, it's funny, he's not in the industry per se, but he's a huge supporter of the mezcal industry. And one of the, the guy is just an encyclopedia of mezcal. Really great guy. And he and I actually talked about at one time doing an island malt, single malt from Scotland, and mezcal comparison. And trying to put together an event, because mezcal is something that it definitely has grown in popularity, and it has its own pocket. I hear more about mezcal than I do tequila a lot of times.
Yeah.
You're spot on, Marty. It's, you guys know, these two things that I wear around my neck are Isla. No, that's Isla, and this is Oaxaca, because it's Isla whiskey and mezcal for me, like all the time. Yeah. But that's that transition that people make all the time. And so, and mezcal, and now it's kind of also extending into like agricole and Claron and really funky rums. That's kind of drawing the same crowd as well. Every year we say it's the year of rum, but it's like, for some reason, now that there's these crazy funky high ester white rums, like that's actually happening, and the beautiful high ester rums coming from Mexico and everywhere. But I think that would be fascinating to do like 4 Isla whiskeys next to 4 really unique mezcals.
Mezcal there's such a diversity in mezcal alone. Like I think of Islay scotches, and I think, bold, briny, smoky, peated, iodine, and then mezcal. I think there's just, you have the smoky, but there's a diversity behind, beyond that. It's not just one sort of flavor camp. And so I think that's why
they almost overlap. There's a similarity, but big differences too.
Yeah.
And they both got phenols, but they've just got to be completely different phenols.
Liz, have you worked with any of the mezcal brands? Have you gone down to Mexico and done any of that?
No, I haven't worked on mezcal, but I mean, you hit it on the head right there, Monique, but the diversity in phenols. So the same phenols that you might get from, peat smoking isn't the same that you would necessarily get with wood smoke. And I'm just, naming two different smoke types or fuel sources there. But you're absolutely right. It's not, the smoky that you would think of, with peat. You're not going to get the same,
It's also, I'll tell you guys, it's crazy. I always take mezcal with me to Scotland, because you can't get good mezcal in Scotland. And they're like, I give it to distillers, and they're like they can't stand it. You give it to an Isla distiller, and they're like, what is this? But it's also, some of them are distilled in wood stills, and so, or clay pot stills. And so you think
clay,
the extractive, why we use copper and how extractive it can be. And when you not only don't have the extraction, but you've got kind of the addition of whatever the flavors are that have sitting, rolling around in clay does, or in a wood still,
and
it's so different.
Your reflux ratios are going to be totally different as well, just because, heat exchange is different in clay versus copper, for example. So there's a lot of, this is an interesting webinar. We should do this.
We should do this.
Yeah, you should. You really should. During my glorious days with Benedictine, not to keep on bringing up my glory days, but when I was with Benedictine, and I was trying to come up with a cocktail where Benedictine could be the base, because every other cocktail just used an eyedropper of Benedictine. So I was trying to come with it as the base. So I stole the penicillin. Actually, I would just tell people it's my ode to the penicillin cocktail. And replacing an Isla single malt, that you usually layer on top of a penicillin, I would choose a mezcal. And a couple of times I made it. It was delicious. A couple of times. Sometimes something went wrong. But to me, there are points where the two can be very. There's so much similarities, and that's I think why I'm drawn to mezcal so much, because I love Scotch so much.
I love it. We have one of the guys in one of our weekly tasting groups has been making all kinds of classic cocktails, but with Islay Scotches, in particular the Ardbeg, the Wee Beastie, the new 5-year-old Ardbeg. And he made like 5 cocktails while we were all online one night, just like messing around in the background. And I ended up being just so into the idea of this daiquiri with 5-year-old, like really highly peated Islay malt. And it was fabulous. It was so good. And it wasn't even super smoky. It had that earthiness, but the citrus really, really stood out and highlighted the citrus in the whiskey, which was really fascinating.
Wow. Well, no, man, Islay malts, when you use those in some cocktails, especially citrus cocktails, they can be so good.
Mm-hmm. So depletions, all about those volume depletions, Marty.
Mm-hmm. Though at the same time, I always hate when they take single malts. I don't know. There's something about it. Taking a single malt and throwing it into a cocktail. Sometimes it works. I think the vast majority of the times it doesn't. I don't think single malts are as complex as, say, a blended Scotch for a cocktail. I'm sorry, Lizard. What were you going to say? Liz?
Oh, I was just going to say that Todd McCoy had a comment earlier, and it's back to the Domfork that you mentioned. And so I've been sitting here very curious on what the flavor profile is, because it seems like it's amazing. So I want to know more about it.
But also, if you're looking at the website or something, Liz, like look at the website. The bottles are beautiful. So then you're like, oh, okay. If that's the care that they take in the label and the bottle, they must take that level of care in the distillate and the botanicals. And so you really, really get that all. You got to have all those pieces. But no, they are as good as they look and sound. They're beautiful, beautiful spirits.
Monique, can we talk real quickly? Our time is drawing near. For brands, I've often heard this. I've only seen one seminar, and it was actually that Robin Robinson character who did one called "We Don't Want to Taste Your Shit." He's a poet. He's the Byron of our age. He had a really good point about. He had a really good, some good examples about how to approach a distributor to bring on one's brand. What would you recommend? I mean, from time of year to how you present it, what to offer. How would you like a brand to come to you who wanted you to carry their product?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'd avoid, OND, October, November, December. Those are busy months for all of us. I'd also avoid June in most cases because it's either a crappy sales month or it's the end of someone's fiscal year. So not a good time in particular for us. It's the end of our fiscal. But you know what? You got to be willing to send samples and probably at least one real full bottle with the real packaging, the real closure, the real paper, not just like a little mock-up of something. I'm amazed at people that are like, either think that's too expensive or it's not ready. It's not done yet. I'm like, okay, then we probably shouldn't be talking.
Yeah, right.
I really appreciate people who can, at least on the ground in their opening state, do the work themselves for 6 months, or something like that, and say, I actually got out and knocked on these doors. I went and called on retailers. I went and spoke with bartenders. I went and did these things, and I sold, 100 accounts. This great rum brand that we're working with in New York did just that. And then now we're growing with them because they've shown that they're willing to actually get out there and do the same work that they're going to be asking us to do. Come to people and have done the research state by state on what transportation is going to cost you, how different the taxes are in every state. That's a big one. We have very high taxes here in Illinois. It's very difficult to get your products sometimes into Pennsylvania. Lew knows that. But so people will come to us and say, I just want this to happen at this price. That's not the way that it goes when there's an extra $2 a bottle in taxes into Chicago and another $2 a bottle in freight. Your pricing's not going to be the same from state to state to state. So have done the research and be aware that there's going to be those differences, and then have really clear expectations for what success looks like. success in 3 months, success in 6 months, success in a year? Is it a number of placements? Is it a number of cases? Is it a particular account that, oh my God, if I get this, I'm going to be really, really happy? And establish that early on so that we both can agree on when we've created success together.
So that's great. I mean, that's right. I mean, and you're doing a presentation this week for the virtual ADI, American Distilling Institute conference, correct?
I am. I'm on one in an hour, and I'm on another one tomorrow.
Excellent.
I'm going to change. I'm going to change. I'm going to look like a new woman.
I'm actually manning a booth.
Right now.
Virtually, I'm manning a booth.
Marty, I went to your booth, and I wasn't messing with you. The video, aside from the like stolen knockoff Portishead music, the video is very good.
Thank you. It was a little something I whipped up. The music, I just couldn't help it. I just love it. It makes me cry. Anything telling the Davidson story is so, it just makes me sad, and in a happy way. Guys, I don't want to keep on asking questions when I know Liz always digs up dirt on people. So you want to give her a gotcha question, Lizard? Come on, Liz.
No, I don't want. Okay,
she always chickens out.
Gotcha. No, I was just you mentioned some trends happening right now, but I guess we're over the years with your experience within the industry. What has been one trend that has caught you off guard over the years?
That's a good one, Liz. It's not a gotcha. I mean, the weird thing is, I hate to say it, it's almost single malt, because it was never about a trend, and I don't even know that even now it's about a trend. But last night, for example, a couple of friends were over. We were sitting talking about, Brett was over, and we were talking about, at one point, we did a Springbank tasting. And we did 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 Springbank. All 3 versions of the 21-year-old, a couple versions of the 10, a couple versions of the 12. I know, Marty, it was crazy. It was at the Catacombs at Ivanhoe in the basement. Hansel was there. Pete Curry was there. Steve was there. The exporter, the importer, and the distiller. And none of us recorded it. And like half a dozen really amazing consumers. We didn't think we thought it was cool. We didn't know that anybody else would ever think that it was cool. We didn't know that anybody would have even listened to a recording like that. But now I look back and think, holy shit, that was momentous. Like, we should have video and audio recorded that. Not like about us, but like the whiskeys and the comments and the palettes that we had, and the distiller, exporter, importer, distributor. Mm-hmm. It was unbelievable that you could get those people in a room all talking about that. Yeah. And so, not that it's trended, but like, I never really wanted it to trend. And if it does trend, then the prices go up. And that's probably not good, for any of us. But it's like, it's cool now. And I didn't really know that was going to happen.
Really? You didn't think single malts were going to? Really?
Well, I mean, there's succeed, and then there's what we got. What we got is insane.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it was because in the early 90s, and maybe it was because I was bartending at the time, so I could see what people were ordering and what people were asking about and gauge kind of the interest. But it was, single malts were, the classic malts came out in '88. And I started working with those in '96. And that was, people were just blown away by them. Once they taste them, especially the island whiskeys like Lagavulin, people couldn't wrap their head around the fact that, whoa, I just drank some liquid and it's smoky. What did you just pour into me? Which was, it was just, I was fasting.
Though, Liz, the low-hanging fruit, the real surprise is RTDs. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's freaking crazy. It's crazy. This stuff has existed forever. Like, I don't know what happened all of a sudden. And bartenders even like them, and snotty bartenders like them, and everybody. I mean, it's nuts what's happened in the past year.
Yeah, it's like funny. It's
it seems like there's like a second wave, though. There's almost like this premiumization of, and I don't know if it's slim cans, if that really, caused it to catalyze, but yeah.
Yeah, nuts.
It's what might be a little part of that, maybe. I don't even know. I'm just guessing. But I know a lot of those ready-to-drinks in small cans have been put into hotel mini bars. And so maybe people really love the fact that, oh, look at this, honey. I can make a Manhattan. There you go. Sweet, right? Isn't that a little love nest? And then, they just bring that home.
I feel like a lot of people, it's not really taking market share from spirits, it's taking market share from beer and wine. And I think it's the crushable kind of thing. It's consistent. They can be low alcohol. You can throw back, half a dozen of them, at a festival, or something like that. People just want to crush them, and they taste good. And I try not to like them either, but they're good.
Hey, Monique, Thomas says greetings from Germany. I don't know if I know you're married now, so I don't want to be throwing you under a bus here if that is a romantic interest.
My friend Thomas.
And Lil Riley from Riley Henderson, the distiller from Few Spirits, also says hello.
So many fun people on today.
Yeah. Well,
and the three of you.
Let's gauge it, man. Paul Helko blew the roof off of last week's show as far as attendance. I don't know if you guys saw that.
I was just with his beard.
We had
and Lew's beards, just like
we had 100 million views last week. 100 million.
Awesome.
No, I'm lying.
No.
It might have been more like 50.
I was like,
for you.
Still, though, it's like 100 million to us. So that's kind of cool. Monique, thank you very much, young lady. We are obviously a very busy woman. I call it the orange juice of the industry because a day without you is like a day without sunshine. Boom.
I got to think that through.
It's an old Anita Bryant thing from commercial. I'm showing my age.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys. I've really been looking forward to this. I've enjoyed the show so much consistently. Every Tuesday, I watched it at noon. It's been just awesome. You guys are so much fun. I think you guys come from such diverse backgrounds. I don't know Liz very well, but I really want to get to know you better, Liz. But I think you're such a great addition to. Lou's laugh alone. That's a 1-hour show for me. Yeah, you guys are.
Hollywood has called him to just tape laugh tracks. Lou laugh tracks.
If I could only monetize it.
And Liz is very elusive. If you can actually find her, she's like Where's Waldo, but not even harder to find.
And she's not in the sauna this week, so she's eluded us again.
Sometimes she, next time, Liz, next time you do it from the sauna, could you just wear a towel?
You.
I don't want it to be revealing. Just wear a towel.
Thought about it. I thought about it, but I consulted with my PR agency, and they said that's probably a bad move.
Not a good look for you.
So before we go, I just want to throw out my I'm trying to do a weekly thing where I stump the scientist, trying to get ask her a realistic question, but I want a scientific answer, and I already gave it to her, so she should have been able to research it. If a vampire fought a werewolf, who'd win?
The zombie.
Yeah,
the zombie
I sort of responded right away.
I know, but
I actually did a little research, and apparently there's some medical opinions about actually these are disease-based. And one of them was a theory behind rabies was feeling this with vampires.
Yeah. For vampires.
But then I thought, for vampires.
The werewolf
and there's some other theories about werewolves as well. One of them included. What's that?
Lycanthropy is the scientific term. I would expect you to know this, scientist.
Is your pronunciation that you're
Yeah, get it together. But ergot, which is if you're not familiar with ergot was something that they tied with werewolves, and I thought that was interesting because that can contaminate rye, which is a component in whiskey, and so it's something that also.
Boom! Exactly what I've been looking for.
Yeah,
Too
all coming
good.
together now.
So anyway, there you go. So I think really what you're saying, it's ergot versus rabies, and I don't think we have enough time for that.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Ergot versus rabies. Oh my God, Liz, you made me so happy. That's exactly what I wanted. Oh my God.
And Monique, this is why you tune in every
Monique.
week, right?
I do. I love you guys. That's genius. Also, I don't know what ergot is, and I love finishing something with like, oh, what am I going to go look up next? I love this.
Liz is doing a whole thing at ADI on ergots, werewolves, and
whiskey.
Yeah,
that's the next new thing.
Can't wait.
I mean, I'm not in the schedule, but I mean, maybe they'll call me and want me in for a secret slot. So stay tuned.
Well, next year
in for Marty when he falls in the bowling alley.
Next year, when the conference is in Transylvania, they're going to ask for this. Be a perfect tie-in.
All right.
Monique's link is down below.
Monique.
Next week we have Colin Blake from Moonshine University.
Yeah.
Colin's wonderful.
Explode. His brain is just going to explode with knowledge all over the screen. So
you realize, Chris, you and I will have, because Liz is just going to completely monopolize his time with all this.
That's fine. That's good.
They're just going to geek, right?
Yeah. I'll bring a pillow. I'll just lay in
bed. Yeah. It's going to be your week, Liz.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Make sure you check out Monique's link below. And be good.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Monique.
Have a good one. Good to see
Monique.
you.
Great to see you.